Okay, let's go ahead and get started. How's everybody doing today? I see everyone's on mute. If you'd like to chime in at any point, please do. Please bring up any concerns or questions or anything you want to discuss. Let's go ahead and get started on. I have a lot on the agenda today, but I'd actually have a lot of things to talk about. So, and then I'm behind on triaging, so we'll triage some issues as well. So let's see. I'll just go down the list from top to bottom. I wanted to address some OneCloud performance issue things. I know those continue to be ongoing, but there are plans in place to help address some of the issues that we've seen. So I know, Chris, you have been working with your team to get some of the templates transferred over. That's awesome. I've also been working with Daniel, and he's working with somebody who's one of the GSS lab admin people, and we're talking about maybe directly attaching. I'm not exactly sure. They know what they're talking about more than I do. I think it's like directly attaching or subscribing the GSS repro account to the to my like developer org. And so that way, as soon as the templates are ready, it'll be easier to transfer them. Also giving them access so they can help initiate transfers. So that's happening. Another thing we're doing, excuse me. Another thing we're doing is for VMware Learning Platform. I noticed we're having similar performance issues on our account there, and it seems that is because we are sharing the same exact infrastructure with the Field Amendment Labs and like the big kind of unrestricted open OneCloud orgs that they're challenged. So it doesn't have its own. We're not being treated currently the same way as a standard VMware Learning Platform tenant would be, and so we're initiating a process with the VMware Learning Platform folks to have our account moved to be like the standard provisioning way that if we were an external customer or what have you. And so we should get much less oversubscribed there. And it's still with VMware Learning Platform, it is still, the business unit pays per user for that, and so it's not something we can scale huge. But and so I think anybody has OneCloud access, we're still going to prefer that. And also any other way of accessing, but we'll make VLP available so we at least have something. I may set up a couple accounts so that we could reserve or what have you if the normal OneCloud access that you have access to isn't working right. Give you a way to make sure that people have a good way to get to the a reliable performance infrastructure to run these templates on. If that's, I know that's a struggle for many. So that should become an option soon. I don't have an ETA on it, but I'm trying to move as aggressively on that as they'll let me. Another thing as well is the availability of HOL 2031. That's what I was going to put. What's new here? I should probably keep these notes down here. Forgive me here. Let's see. And another thing I think the VLP account will help bring as well is definitely an improvement in the catalog transfers. VLP has a good dedicated support organization, but we're just not reaping the benefits of that yet since we're not a standard VLP tenant. So that should really help a lot in getting updated templates transferred and available quickly through that process. So that'll be nice. And then, of course, HOL availability. I think one of the benefits it'll bring, on one hand, if whatever you're doing is HOL lab compatible, I think it's I'm going to encourage people to use that primarily. Of course, right now, I haven't updated many lab guides for HOL compatibility, but it's one of those things that has a snowball effect. Once you start knocking down one or two labs, then the others become much quicker. For example, several of our labs use Plane Spotter, and so I've prepared this deploy Plane Spotter lab for HOL, which means because I can't access, say, Docker Hub from the HOL infrastructure, I need to upload those machine images, or sorry, the container images to our public Harbor repository, and that's already done, and modified any commands needed on that lab. And so when I go to any other lab that uses Plane Spotter to validate it for HOL 2031, it's going to be a lot faster and easier to do that. So I think we'll have a lot of the lab guides prepped for the HOL 2031 template. And another thing as well is that I'm not exactly certain when the HOL 2031 is available. I'm not sure if it's today or not. I think during VMworld, they don't publish the HOLs to the public website, the new ones, until after VMworld. I think it comes pretty quickly after VMworld. I need to check and see if it's today. I'm gonna have to, if anyone wants to check that out and let me know. My HOL account had special access, so I'll have to figure out a way to validate whether or not the new 2130 lab is on the public internet yet. But if not, it will be there very shortly. And also at the same time, the HOL team will transfer all those HOL pods to Global One Cloud sandboxes, and so that'll be another way. I think internally, when we use the HOL 2031 pod, it will you'll be able to remove the internet access restrictions and essentially go through any of the labs with it. Of course, it has PKS and the clusters pre-installed, and so you're most likely not going to go through the installation-related labs with that template. But again, once we get that rolling, I think on one cloud, even where we're seeing performance issues, that template will likely perform better because it is a smaller footprint template, and it can still do the vast majority of, if not everything that we do on the site. I mean, while it is a smaller template, the delta between what we can do there and what we can do in the slightly larger template is still given, there's still pretty strict performance restrictions on one cloud overall anyways. And so there's not a very big delta. And so I'm going to push, do more testing on that, and whether it is the public HOL 2031 or whether internally we make a version of that template that doesn't have internet restrictions, really push to use that one a lot more, because I think all those things will reduce some of the burden that we've seen on the HOL infrastructure, not HOL, the one cloud infrastructure overall, and will hopefully improve performance on everybody. And another, I think, important thing that's happening, this is going to be over the next, say, two to 3 months, is that the field enablement lab service is being transitioned to HOL leadership. I think one of the largest challenges that we've had in this infrastructure is that they've had zero restrictions whatsoever on how many things people can load in there, and so they just overload the system. Any unlimited number of requests, no constraints, no restrictions, no calendar published to allow people to try to pick days that are less busy for events or what have you. So I think it's another thing that's really going to help us on those issues. So does anyone have any questions, comments about one cloud performance? Apologize if you're not inside of VMware, Dell, or actually Pivotal. You're most likely not using the HOL 2031 instead. So some of the stuff may not be relevant to you. So apologize for that. And let's see. So let's talk about, and again, interrupt me at any time if you have any comments, questions, statements. And so HOL 2031, it's essentially available. We used it at the VMware Hands-On Labs at VMworld. We, I think, finished up in the top 10 at number 8, which I was told, I don't really remember, but someone said that's the highest we've been for enterprise PKS out of the Hands-On Labs at these big events. So good show there. We probably would have done a little better, but this is what everyone was saying, is that the NSXT lab was like 900 pages long, so people had to come back and take it 3 times. But yeah, we did pretty good there. I think we had, last I checked, it was somewhere around 360 people went through HOL 2031 at VMworld. I think there were actually more than that at finish, but that was just because I last I checked was several hours before we closed up for the day. So yeah, overall good show for Enterprise PKS, and big updates. Project Pacific. I think everyone probably saw that. That was a hard one to avoid. Really transforming vSphere and ESXi. Probably one of the largest changes that been proposed for the core vSphere operation. And ESXi update in a long time. We're really going to redo things, in some ways. And it's not for everybody, right? I think this will require licensing to get access to the updates that they'll have available to run Kubernetes inside of ESXi, and with what we call pod VMs, right, which is similar to vSphere integrated containers. We have a very thin, lightweight virtual machine that wraps around a pod and runs our version of a kubelet. And so, really bringing Kubernetes as a first-class citizen. I think is really obvious at VMworld, for those who weren't there, right, that is having a massive impact on the audience. I think everybody had some awareness of Kubernetes. There were some that were starting to get into it a little bit more aggressively, but I think the vast majority of the VMware audience was really interested. They knew that they needed to get something like this going, but they were really dragging their feet, because I think for a lot of IT, of our IT infrastructure audience, some it's another thing to think about, another thing to do. You got full plates already, and so it may not have been getting as much attention. And it was very apparent at VMworld this year after those announcements that everybody is really taking it a lot more serious now. All of our Kubernetes sessions were packed, beginning to end, and we had. I wasn't in all the sessions, right? I think there were 100 Kubernetes sessions at VMworld, so I don't know if all of them were packed, but all the ones that I saw were packed. I didn't go to a lot of them because it said session full, and you didn't want to be the packed in there like a sardine, or most likely you're going to want a session full. You may not be able to get in at all. So, but just almost all the Kubernetes sessions were just sold out. All the ones I went to were packed completely. There's a ton of interest in Kubernetes overall, which gets to important to think elephant in the room. What's the impact of Project Pacific to Enterprise PKS? The answer is I don't know exactly, right? But I do think we're going to be in a very good place. I think there's a lot of awareness from the top of the business unit leadership through all the project management, that there's a potential that announcing things like, not even a potential, a guarantee, something like Project Pacific. Clearly Enterprise PKS, isn't Project Pacific today, and which makes sense, because Project Pacific is when it's not even barely going into beta, but it's not going to be ready for full maturity yet, and so. Of course, what is this transition plan? How's it going to look? What are things going to look like at the end of this once Project Pacific is fully mature? All interesting questions, but I think for me the most important part is there's a firm commitment, right? To move forward with Enterprise PKS today, and that as Project Pacific bits start to become part of vSphere, and we announce more of that in the future, that's a smooth transitionary process. Because I think one thing that we'll find, really what we're saying with Project Pacific is, today anybody can load up a VM and run containers on a vSphere environment, right? And in a sense, you say, hey, that's not hard to do. Just load a VM and load containerization, load Kubernetes on top of it. But it turns out it is a lot to do, right? It's not hard to load up VMs. We all know how to do it. But to manage Kubernetes environments, there is still a very challenging thing. And so with Enterprise PKS, we're not taking any advantage of the platform capabilities any more than any of our competitors could have. I think the point is underneath Enterprise PKS, we have a platform, vSphere. And even though anyone can load Kubernetes on top of it, to really create an enterprise-grade manageable solution, you need a solution for that, right? And I don't think Project Pacific is going to change that. It is going to enable new API, right? To be able to interact with vSphere in a different way, rather than saying, I'm going to create a VM the traditional way. I have this API that's saying I'm going to create these new types of VMs and Kubernetes clusters through this new API. And so with that, I think you're going to need something there to call the API to make everything happen the same as you would today to load VMs that would have Kubernetes. And so vSphere may do more different things, but ultimately, I don't think, in and of itself, you're not going to get those capabilities and have an enterprise class solution without additional components, right? That are included in base vSphere. And so I think this need to have management layer, management components on top and around Project Pacific will not change. And I think the technology itself, let's say assuming we maintain a product enterprise PKS, right, from currently where it's at today, where we have the PKS VM and PKS clients and so on. They interact largely with BOSH to have BOSH create the Kubernetes cluster and feature those front-end components may interact with, and again, there's no guarantees that any of this is what's happening. I'm not purview to exact plans. I don't think exact plans have even made yet. So I'm, in some of this is speculatory. So, but what I anticipate, something like, we will, have our management components on the front end. And there may even be a period of time where, just like right now, if you want to have a Windows Kubernetes cluster, when you ask for a cluster, you're going to have to call out some specific attributes, and you may have a Windows cluster and you may have a separate normal cluster, and you might choose to provision a different cluster that has GPUs or something like that. And I think as Project Pacific comes available, I hope what we see is something like we have a consistent front end, consistent tooling, consistent ability to apply policy to whatever cluster that you add to the system, which things we're starting to see with Tanzu mission control and things like that today, which works, I think will be something we see a lot of with enterprise PKS deployments as it grows. Yeah, so I think there's, with this, there's a real strong potential. This is not, in some ways, we could think of this as like NSXV to NSXT type of transition, but I think of it but I think what we're working with is dramatically more conducive to a smooth transition, right? We manage different clusters. If you put a workload into containers, it necessarily has to be able to withstand restarts. Right, so if we bring up an equivalent cluster, one that maybe was to be spun up with BOSH, we spin up another one with Pacific. There's the to just tell it to place this container that's over here on that new one and then transition it over. I mean, everything about the underlying technology here should make that the potential for that to be a dramatically smooth process. I think, from talking, like I said, to leadership management, there's a huge awareness that we need to ensure that we commit to that type of smooth transition. We need to make sure that there is full awareness, especially in the wake of I think a lot of customers, having a little heartburn over NSXV to NSXT transitions, especially in the wake of some of that awareness, that we need to do an extra good job of getting that story together, committing to it, and making sure there's a lot of awareness. Because again, right now, you want to get Kubernetes, enterprise PKS, really powerful solution. We're just going to continue, and I think as we transition, it's going to be like a lot of products when they go, they evolve. Things on the inside of those products, will mature and improve over time, especially when you go through major updates. And because nature of the world going more open source, we're discussing more about what happens inside the inner core of our products. But anytime you've got any software, you go through major updates, a lot of things on the inside can improve and change. And I think for make a smooth transition, keep good, smooth, consistent user front end and experience there, I think it shouldn't be a big encumbrance to ongoing sales and deployment of enterprise PKS. They anticipate, we don't know when we're going to see a strong maturity and feature parity with what is going to become available through Project Pacific, whereas enterprise PKS is mature, and a lot of project managers are saying it may be 2 years, 3 years before before we have exact feature parity, or before, and then also we have people continuing to deploy enterprise PKS extensively. It's just growing like crazy, and so I expect very, very smooth transition through those. And I do expect that at the end of the day, once all the project specific bits are fully mature and baked in, it's going to be a new API and new capabilities in vSphere. And whether you use Enterprise PKS or whether you use other solutions, because I think other solutions will be able to take advantage of those capabilities as well. And it'll improve all Kubernetes offerings on top of vSphere. But I still think, again, for a full enterprise grade solution to run Kubernetes in your environment, I believe it's going to continue to be additional management components. Enterprise PKS, essentially, you continue to purchase in that way. To need to have something to communicate with those APIs and create a manageable solution. So that was a long rant there. Hopefully I did that justice, but any thoughts, questions, discussion on that?
Hi, Art. This is Stefan speaking. A question I also added that in the chat. One of the things where I'm also looking into Pacific is, do you know, because I didn't see that in terms of the details, will we also refactor our vCenter appliance so that it's basically an application running inside of a number of containers, each of the different services, and that you also can use Kubernetes or kubectl commands to, let's say, make this new or old application into, let's say, a new jacket? Is that something that we also are looking into?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good things happening in that direction. I think there's still a lot that's unknown, but including timelines. But a couple of things that are happening there is the vision will include being able to use Kubernetes manifests to deploy virtual machine-based workloads as well. And so they're working on custom resource definitions to extend some additional, keywords, parameter values that will, I believe, enable you to use the Kubernetes manifest to load traditional virtual machine workloads.
Let me give you some context. If we could have our vCenter being spun up like inside of a Kubernetes construct, that would mean that a vCenter administrator would immediately get into the nitty-gritty details on using Kubernetes, and it would also help him to further, let's say, make him relevant to the business units or the teams that are requesting Kubernetes from an enterprise PKS perspective. So you see, he gets immediately an on-the-job training because he needs to know Kubernetes and certain Kubernetes kubectl commands and how to monitor that. And with this, it would also be of help on helping out his teammates or different units, different teams, by providing the correct infrastructure where they can run their applications within Kubernetes cluster. So that would make sense to me that we would enable that so that they get acquainted really fast with Kubernetes, because it's now being run, the vCenter runs on a Kubernetes cluster or in a Kubernetes construct. And that means that they would gain, let's say, relevance and experience in also talking to, let's say, their application teams.
Yeah, no, I think that's great ideas, and I'll definitely share those around. I don't know about what'll happen in the distant future. At least in the current plans, I don't think there is intent that vCenter itself will run on Kubernetes. Like, for example, if you use vCloud Foundation right now with SDDC Lifecycle Manager, there's an option to just like have it automatically deploy new vCenters, right? And I think that'll probably continue to be focused for now on things like SDDC Lifecycle Manager to deliver that capability. I do think we're going to see other VMware products, though, start to be able to be deployed as containers at some point.
Yeah, which is already the case with VRA. So VRA 8 is a fully Kubernetes cluster that they deploy with kubeadm. So that's already a good, let's say, direction that we are going from a CMDU perspective. So VRA is the first. I think VROps and all of the rest will follow. But I think we need to also get that up to, let's say, the compute, so the vSphere, because that is what most customers still are using, and which could also help us into the enterprise PKS, let's say, value add that they would then bring on top of, let's say, the vSphere layer. That is, I see we are taking the good, or in my personal opinion, the direction in making our solutions container-based, and that's clear and that's good. But I was also wondering if you might have seen that they are also looking with Pacific specifically, that also the vCenter, for example, they will also dramatically refactor that virtual machine, that appliance, into a Kubernetes construct, so that it's spun up over.
Yeah, so I think we'll get a best of both. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be, I need a new vCenter, and so use Kubernetes to spin up a new vCenter. But again, I do think like what we're going to see is like a developer wants a containerized application, and so they submit a Kubernetes manifest, and through that, it's a self-service mechanism that they can deploy applications the way they want to. And I do anticipate that. It seemed like in the announcements, and again, I have no idea exactly when this will all happen, but it seems that the same developer, they also need virtual machine-based workloads, right? And so it'd be kind of an odd fit if the developer gave the developers this great way to get containerized workloads, and I think especially with enterprise applications, developers may need to have a combination of containerized applications and virtual machines that compose their distributed application. And so I think having that ability to use Kubernetes manifest to extend a virtual machine, and I think with that it would make a lot of sense. And what I would expect the way that would be implemented would be to have the supervisor cluster, right? We all have this cluster that exists inside of ESXi that is monitoring and since doing the so with Pacific, right, we'll have a supervisor cluster in the kernel, and that will running in ESXi, and that will spin up other Kubernetes clusters, and it will also have the job of kind of monitoring the same way that a Kubernetes cluster does with applications, but it'll be doing that with Kubernetes clusters as well. And so I anticipate as they do that, they'll most likely use the Kubernetes keep alive mechanisms and self-healing mechanisms, or at least have the language to be able to support it, and have a vSphere underneath be able to enforce and respond through those type of keywords. But some of that we'll have to wait and see, but I will definitely carry forward those ideas whenever I meet with product management. So I appreciate that.
Maybe an additional question. Sorry to.
No, please go ahead. I'm glad you're.
I did yesterday a presentation for a customer with a demo, and they were specifically, and it was on the full SDDC. It was about Cloud Foundation. It was about vRealize automation, cloud automation services. So the full, let's say, CMP story that we bring as VMware to customers. One of their questions, and I was looking on the website, so they are high into Terraform templates to be able to do everything infrastructure as code. Now, my question is, are we looking into, because we will have a specific cloud native session also with them, are we working, or do you know that we will have also a Terraform provider for PKS?
That I am not sure of. So I mean, I think there's a lot changing in with things, but we have the enterprise PK. So I'd say probably the most similar thing, maybe the concourse pipelines still work especially well.
Yep.
And that's not necessarily the right answer for everybody, but I do think as you get into those conversations, there will be some that try to say every single piece of my automation has to be Terraform. And for me, I don't think that that's a good architectural approach. I think it's, a lot of people have tried to do that for years with Ansible and realized you can't do that with 100% of everything. And some people will do it because they have this, this vision that if we did everything through, say, Ansible, then we could have a comprehensive single entity around configuration management and tracking configuration management. But it gets to the point where vendor support across complex environments, you never get 100%, so you can't really use it as your source of truth for configuration management. And I think my preference on automation pipelines is, if you look at any complex stack of deployment things, most likely you have 15 things in your automation stack. A couple of them, the vendors and the community is going to have best support for Ansible, and some of them maybe Puppet, and some of them maybe other things. And so I like to use, whether it's Terraform or another automation, to be able to be inclusive of the best stuff that's already available, because otherwise you're redoing those other things. So maybe from that perspective, while there may be preference towards Terraform, the concourse pipelines work very, very well, and they could be called from Terraform. And so if you wanted to create, say, a larger Terraform pipeline and adapt it to where in your Terraform pipeline you call the concourse pipelines. But one of the challenges is getting maintenance around making sure that engineering will maintain those templates. And right now the best maintenance that we have is for the concourse pipelines, and then also for enterprise PKS management console. I haven't dealt with it myself, but from my understanding is there was a lot of focus on making a very modern and robust API for the things that enterprise PKS management console does. And so one, it provides another avenue to help streamline and automate parts of the PKS installation. And I think especially with the API that I understand it should have, because I haven't used it myself, it should be something that should be callable by other pipelines, and you'll be able to incorporate that into other pipeline utilities, if that helps.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to just mention a couple other things, if there's anything anyone's interested in helping with as we get to it. There's a lot of cool things that I want to do on the site. And basically, if you go to the website and if you see something that you think could be improved, awesome, right? I think everything on the site right now, it's a little bit rushed, right? Trying to get a baseline of content out there. And my hope is not to put forward content when I put it out there that is written in stone, right? It's to get something out there. And I feel like if anybody looks at whether it's a lab guide, whether it's the homepage, whether it's processes that we use, if anybody looks at those and thinks, hey, I think it could have been a little bit better, I would have understood it better if it had, a little note in it or what have you. Remember, you're not the only one who's having that thought, right? If you're thinking that, guarantee you other people are as well. So, don't ever look at any of this stuff on the website and think, I don't know if my thought here would be relevant. Absolutely, it is. So anything that we see, don't think of anything inside as written in stone. And we're always trying to improve things, always trying to improve the processes. I put things in place. I don't really know what I'm doing right. I'm just learning as I go. And I think, as we have more experts who participate, different skill sets, different backgrounds, you're going to see things that, you'll realize you can do better, or you can help improve on. So anything you see, always open for improvement. But we're really looking to get more automations going on the site, more GitOps automations. One of the big ones is getting the images. Right now we save directly in the repo, making the repo really large. And so we have S3 buckets and Google Cloud buckets and things like that already. So I need to get a crawler going at some point here to take the images where they are now, move them to our S3 or Google buckets and then replace the image tags in there. So some logic for that. Things like the courses homepage and lab guide homepage, when we're still working on thinking about working on automations that will auto update those pages, and things like validation stamps. It'd be great to have something that goes through. And it's probably, I've already seen to play with it a little bit. It may just be sed commands, that'll report back to me, which of the lab guides have had a V12 validation stamp now. So that's probably pretty straightforward. So, metrics is still an interesting thing. Repo Explorer is one that I've used, but I haven't found a single Git reporting solution that does all the different types of metrics well, right? Like, Repo Explorer is one that's available and it does a good job of reporting commit activity by user. and by date, and much better than what you get out of GitHub. But it doesn't do really reporting on issues, or there's various other things. And so eventually, maybe we'll have our own like Prometheus dashboard or something that we customize. But if anyone's aware of any available Git monitoring solutions that report, I know monitoring is not the right word, but Git metrics reporting solutions, or want to work on dashboards towards that, those always appreciated. And of course, trying to move towards infrastructure as code and how we develop the templates. So lots of interesting things. I think when I talk to people, there's a lot of interest in participating in stuff like this. And so whether you're somebody who might want to lead the charge on this, or if you're just potentially interested, one way or another, we'll be talking about it on this call. We will get to doing these things, and provide the opportunity for anyone who wants to observe or participate at any level. So if there's no questions on that, definitely speak up if you have any questions or statements. Otherwise, I will jump into some issue triaging here. So let me pull up my Firefox. Now, I've been behind on issue triaging, so I want to encourage anybody, please, if you get the chance, come in here and see, mostly, the issues that you can see, some have labels and some don't. Some of them have labels, like I think there may be a couple in here. Let me see, let me go to my labels. I have some labels like good first issue. There might be a couple like this. So yeah, if you look for these are things anyone could potentially help with. One of the ones that's interesting, screenshots. I want to show a little trick on screenshot updates, because I think everyone knows, like, doing the in-browser editor, really easy way to make updates. But it's not necessarily easy to make in-browser updates to screenshots, because let's just pick an example here. So let's go to lab guides, pick a lab guide. Let's go to 2.4, or sorry, 1.4. And let's just pick one here. Enterprise PKS 101. So we've got screenshots here. And let's say I want to update the screenshot. That's, for me, if I'm doing a lot of screenshots, I prefer to do it. I've got a video out there on the YouTube channel that shows how I do screenshot updates typically when I'm writing a lab guide, when I have a lot to do. But what if not everybody's comfortable with that process, or maybe sometimes it might be even easier to what if I wanted to update this but through the in-browser editor method? And so normally that would mean, if I look at, where's my, I click here, readme, let's look at our raw. So we'd go into the YAML and we'd find our image, and we'd have to take the image tags, and you see this is a link that looks into the images subdirectory and finds an image there. So we can go back. We would have to go into the images subdirectory and then upload a new image here. You can say upload files. And then once you've uploaded it here, then you'd have to go back and click on the README, edit the README, and go back in here and replace that link. And so it's a bit definitely cumbersome to do if you're trying to do through the in-browser editor method, but there is another way, right? So let's check this out. So if I duplicate this tab, and let's say I go to an issues, and I'm going to open a new issue ticket, but I'm not going to actually open the ticket. I'm just going to use this nifty little editor that GitHub provides here as a sketch pad for myself. So now I can open my utility here to take a screenshot. And if I take a screenshot, I can go in here and I can paste the screenshot, give it just a second, and it uploads it to somewhere for me and gives me a tag. So now I can take that tag. So let's say if I have this tab open and I have another tab open where I'm editing through the in-browser editor, and I can just come in and paste that tag here. And we can see now we've got that. So if you could keep, rather than going through the full pull request process and cloning and pushing the repo, you can just keep a sketch pad open here, cut and paste your images right here. And as you cut and paste them, if you're editing in this tab, right, then you can a really easy, pretty easy way of inserting images through the browser. If that's something that's relevant for you, and hopefully make it easier to do that. So I'm going to cancel those changes because we don't want to leave that there. So hopefully that's helpful. Let's go back to issues. And so another thing I want to mention too is that unless you have a specific role-based permission, you can only close your own images, but anyone can comment on any issues. And so if you don't have that permission, let's say you come in here and you see, hey, somebody pointed something out, maybe somebody had a question, right? And you're able to answer it, but you can't close the issue usually. Like I've got this because I'm an admin in this account. But you won't see the close issue. Also, if you don't have the appropriate privileges, you can't add labels, which is kind of annoying. But if at all possible, right? If you do see an issue here that looks like, hey, someone needs help and I can help it. Some of these are just information, that we'll get to eventually. They're not especially important, but some of these maybe a user's got a question about something and needs help. And if you see any of those and you're able to respond back, you can go ahead and respond back. And apologize if there's anybody on who's not eligible to participate in the competition. I'm going to try to get the competition approved legal or whatever approval I need to do to make sure we can expand that to everybody. I'm also looking at really aggressively, I'm trying to get digital badges going. So we have ways to really recognize and give people credit for their contributions here in a more meaningful way. So those are things I'm going to push towards. No guarantees on any of that stuff, but I think I have a lot of support in the business unit. So hopefully we'll see the ability to extend incentives to people outside of, say, VMware Dell family as we have public participants.
Yeah, Art, this is Riaz. I have a quick comment.
Hey, yes, please.
I have a quick comment on the direct inclusion of the demo that you just showed, right? Where you can go directly and update a README or whatever. So what happens is it says you can't commit to so-and-so because it's a protected branch. And it makes you create a branch and then use a pull request. So I think the only way for us to do that is do it through a pull request and not go and commit it directly.
Oh, yes. And so when you do, this one I'm logged into an admin account. So let me go to my other account and we'll see so this other account over here does not have any permissions at all. I'm not even a member. So if I go here, let's see, where's a good tab? Where's the one? Okay, so if I go here, I can actually do the same thing, but because it's going to automatically do the pull request for me, right? So if I go to, pick a page like README, we'll click on the README to see the in-browser editor. So if I edit here, including whether it's the image or otherwise, as a non-member, it will, and all I do is click propose file change. It will, behind the scene, completely transparently, it's going to fork it. It's going to create an update branch, and it's going to prepare the pull request. So let's just do this real quick. So there's no period here, so I'm going to add a period at the end of that sentence, and we'll say fix typo, and then propose file change. And if you see what it does here, and this is you see it created. Look where it's sourcing it from, patch 2. On this fork, and I did, even though I'm not a member with this account, I already had a fork, but it wouldn't matter if I had a fork. Even if I didn't have a fork yet, it would have created it for me that fast, and it created this patch for me that fast, right? So the in-browser editor way is it's pretty cool, and all I have to do is push the create pull request. It prepares it for me nicely. And if I had started on a 1.4 page, it should have pushed it to 1.4. But again, a good thing to make sure if you want to get it on the 1.4 branch, you'll choose that. But it had it all set up for me, so now I can create pull request as an outside user, and it's still going to say review required. And right, so then if in your case, as you have an admin account, so you can come in and approve your own pull request. But it's just awesome. It does that. The whole full pull request here. Now as an admin, I can come in and just check, and I can see I added the period, and I can approve it. And then,
yeah, I got it.
Right, cool, awesome. Yeah, I love that feature of GitHub there, that automation. But yeah, as we get into these issues or admin stuff, one thing I want to mention to everybody, as I just mentioned, Riaz is an admin on the account. He can approve merges, and I think some people may already have the skill set and may have interest in doing that type of participation. Anyone is welcome, right? A more basic level, if you're getting started but want to get some GitOps experience, is getting the permission level to triage issues. Anybody who wants, if you'd like to get those permissions, ask, right? I want to set up some formal documentation around it. I haven't yet, but just reach out to me and send me a Slack message or something, open an issue ticket, and I'll add it to where if you want, you'll get GitHub has a few different RBAC roles. One of them is called triage, and that would allow you to close issues. It would allow you to label issues. And so one of the big needs here is coming through and looking at labels. It's I'll write a lab guide about it, but it's a fairly straightforward thing, and there's no wrong thing, right? This is, like I said, very friendly community. To I think my hope is like, if you're interested in this, if you come in here and you think, okay, we see, what is this talking about? We see Docker images present on CLI VM. So they have a template level issue. You may not know, I'm sorry, I need to go into this account where I have permissions. Let's pick one here, like wrong screenshot on manual configuration lab guide. And so if you're interested in helping to triage issues, and we get points for doing that, you can come in here and say, oh, this is talking about a lab guide, so this applies to a lab guide, right? And just hopefully the goal here is to get a set of labels that are pretty intuitive. And I don't think they're all there yet. And so the label definitions themselves, I think, have a lot of room for improvement. And so I think it's great if you're interested in triaging, you come through here, look at the labels, and it was confusing, let me know, like the bugs. I think I need to redo some of the label definitions there. And so we'll definitely look at that and love your feedback, because I think, hopefully we get to these points where you do this a couple times and it becomes really intuitive to apply labels. And there's again, no wrong label. Like maybe you think this is a good first issue, right? Help wanted. I think, that's great for a lot of these. If you're not going to do it yourself right away and something I need to get better at, just throw the help wanted on there. So as we do competitions, and hopefully if we get into, more external participants, and we get, maybe hopefully we'll eventually get to digital badges, things like that. We'll see more and more people coming in here looking for ways that they can help. And, so just throwing the help wanted on there, and just looking for anything that looks relevant. Like I don't need to say triage needs information. I don't need more information. They've already provided the information. This isn't a support thing, right? I think we got everything that we need in there. We know that this applies to lab guides. So if people come in here and start looking for bugs that apply to lab guides or issues that apply to lab guides, they're able to find it. And so generally, like I need to put in better description on this, but I would consider this sort of a bug, but it's a minor bug, right? So we could go ahead and put like bug minor, and now I've got some labels on it, and that's useful again. So if people are coming and they're working on a lab guide and they're trying to find something, they can use these labels to filter them. And if you think you want to start working on it, you can assign yourself. You can do. This isn't going to be part of any project as of right now. This may change in the future, but as of right now, we're just doing the projects around template level fixes. But in the future, we will. I think the next sprint, I'm going to do a lot more with like the agile processes and the Kanban boards, where by the time we do the sprint for 1.5, I'll have a board up that will have an issue ticket open for every single lab guide that needs to be validated, right? And then as part of that next sprint competition, we'll say, hey, the first person who validates each new lab guide will get, some sort of incentive, and then that'll help to start to bring the exposure to the Kanban boards and the GitHub issue tickets and these get projects to people who are working on lab guides as well as people who are working on template level updates. So triage. So we have 9 minutes left. You're welcome to drop off. We can do open question and answer. And if there's not any questions or discussion, I'll probably just go in and triage a couple of these tickets real quick if you would like to watch that. So let's pause here for a second, see if anyone has anything they'd like to discuss. Okay, I'm gonna take that as a no, but interrupt me at any point. I'm just gonna go ahead and let's triage a couple issues here. So,
hey, Art, I'm sorry I was muted.
Please no.
Quick question.
Sure,
if you want us to, if we want to make an edit to the lab guide for correction or clarity or something, do you want us to open an issue and reference the issue in the edit, and vice versa?
I'm not concerned about being that formal right now. I think, some cases it's good to have awareness of how to do that. I think, if you're doing something particularly significant or something that is going to take you, a period of time, maybe you're going to do something over 2 or 3 days, it's especially good in those times to have an issue ticket so people have some awareness. But for, it's not absolutely not required.
Okay, cool.
And one thing I will say though is like, if for those, first, we expect more people who are from the general public to slowly start participating in this call. So we're going to, until I get the competition stuff hopefully approved for everybody, I'm going to try to really avoid talking about competitions on these public facing calls. But still think, 99% of people are on here right now are there. So I'll just mention real quick. There's points you can earn and prizes you can win for opening and closing issue tickets, and you can stack points, right? So if you do want to open an issue ticket, then make an update, and then resolve your issue ticket, you have the chance to get more points, more prizes, and those commit lines also still count towards the, total commit points competition. And so if you register all the points, you still have to register for everything you want to win when you do into the registration form, but it is definitely an opportunity there to stack the points and get extra points by doing that mechanism. But that doesn't mean that it's preferred. I want to have people understand that process and use it. Really, I do prefer that process. Again, if it's a bigger update that might take multiple days, but for small things, I'm of the mentality of, as Kenny says, the get stuff done, GSD mentality, and sometimes that extra process overhead can get quite cumbersome for smaller updates. Okay, and so I'm looking at this issue ticket here, transfer VApp templates. And so there's a new lab guide that talks about requesting for transfer of VApp templates if you're using OneCloud. A lot of people access different OneCloud orgs, and transferring a VApp template is not, and especially it can become a little bit cumbersome if you open a ticket, let's say with the support desk, to ask for the transfer. They may not be super fast about it, but it's not a lot of labor on the user's part, right? You open a ticket, and I've already got a template how to do it. It may take a minute, 2 minutes to do, and then to just keep an eye on it if you want, or once you have it opened, you don't really have to do much with it, right? Hopefully support will follow through. But yeah, it turns out that when I publish a new template, it's not a lot of work to transfer each individual template but then I'll end up having 30 different transfers to do, and then a lot of other stuff on the plate. And so I think there's still a lot of transfers that are out there that I haven't scheduled yet that people are interested in. So that's one of the reasons I put a lab guide up there. And if you're not inside of VMware, you can't fully do the transfer, but part of the process in that course was to have an issue ticket open, right? And so even if you're outside of VMware and you can't actually initiate the template transfer, open an issue ticket for it, right, per those instructions, and that'll get it to the top of the list in terms of the attention, and myself or somebody will then take the next step and get that transferred for you. And if you're inside of VMware, it's easy to open a ticket real quick with the help desk for a particular template transfer that you want, especially once you do it once or twice. All the instructions are there. And so if you are interested in having a template transferred, hopefully I'll get to it eventually. You could open a issue ticket here if you'd like for me or possibly somebody else to see it and help you with it. But the fastest way to make sure that a template gets transferred is to initiate it yourself. And there's a course, a lab guide in here that says how to transfer templates. And but going back to that topic of triaging again, anyone who wants to get the permission to triage, just ask and I'll give you that permission. So I'll go ahead here, and this applies to lab guide. In general, with labels, apply as many labels as you think see fit. More is better than less, because one of the things I've learned is that natively within the GitHub filtering solution, you can't wildcard search for different labels. You have to search specifically for the specific label. And so like in a case where something applies to a particular template, this applies to baseline 0.6, right? So I'm going to make sure I say applies to baseline 0.6. But I also have here this one that says it doesn't have the specific version number. Where'd it go? And then see this one says applies to baseline. And so this one is pertinent for if you do have an issue, like maybe a new feature request for the baseline template, you can't apply that to a specific version. So this would be a good label to apply. But I'm actually need to update the instructions here. I think this is actually good to apply also, because more rather than less, because then if people want to do a search or a filter based on anything that applies to any of the baseline templates, having the presence of this label will allow them to do that, since we can't natively do any type of wildcard searches. We have to search for exact labels. So applying more labels rather than less is a better practice. I need to update this too. Applies to VApp template level 1, level 2. Do we know? Are we sure? I'm going to leave that one off now. I need to update those labels. But yeah, we'll say applies to, not applies to lab guide. And I'll add one here that says applies to VApp template. And I'll put baseline and baseline 0.6 both. And let's see if there's anything else here that we think is a good fit. And there's one that just applies to VApp template. Yes, this applies to a VApp template. So I'll go ahead and do that. And this is not a bug. And I'm going to go ahead and put state in progress, because if you read the notes here, Daniel's already opened the support ticket to get this rolling. And so we can see quickly that that's going to be in progress already. And I think that's about it. And so now we'll see anybody who wants to filter and see, as it's, in many cases, we have several users who may want to see the same. Oh, and I see he also got the NSXT ready here. So I'll go ahead and add those. And other people may want to use the same destination org that he's using. And so we could come in here, and I'm sorry, NSXT ready 0.4 and NSXT ready. And then we'll say applies to, where'd that other one go? Applies to VApp template and in progress. Okay, so those are good. So I think this one's all ready to go, and we've triaged that issue. And now anybody who wants to see, usually if you say, hey, I can't find this template in my WinCloud org, first thing you should do is look here. Use one of these filtering to help filter down and look for this. We can see that the destination he's transferring us to is ACNA org. So if somebody else who uses that OneCloud org wanted to get access to these templates, you could come here first and look to see, has somebody else already initiated the transfer before you go to try to reinitiate it? And so in this case, you could see, hey, look, and we have the labels applied, so we could search and filter more easily to determine that information. And so that's the top of the hour. And so I'll still hang out if anybody wants to have any just questions or discussion, but a little primer on triaging issues, and we'll try to take some time to do some issue triage whenever we can on these calls. And I'll go ahead and I apologize if anybody has put these issues in. I've gotten fairly behind. You can see some of these are open for a while, and I haven't actually triaged them, but I'm trying to pay attention if there's somebody actually asking for urgent support to get to those sooner. Some of these are just, it's okay to get to them a little bit slower, so I haven't triaged them yet, but apologize if I've been slow on triaging any of these issues. Yeah, if there's no questions or discussion, thanks for joining. Otherwise, I'll hang out. If you have any questions, I'll be here for another minute. Thanks a lot for dialing in.
I have a question, Art.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, I made I made a change, submitted an issue. I went to the lab guys. I want to make sure I'm submitting my I don't know, points or whatever you call it correctly. Yes. And I remember you going over this last week. You said you got to submit it twice.
Yeah,
is that correct?
If you make an update that, if you go look through the competition and see, hey, mine, this one update that I'm making would apply to earning me more than one thing, right? for everything that you want to earn. So let's just pull up a more vivid example, right? You know what I'm talking about, but just making sure there's nothing left to question. Sorry, I'm taking a second here. And I'll open the forms here too. But yeah, let's say that, okay, I've done something, I've made a patch, and it gets me it's an update and an improvement, and involves reporting an issue, or actually maybe resolving an issue. Because let's say if you open an issue on something, that's one thing. So you have to enter a point for that. And maybe when you commit the update, the update itself will resolve an issue. So now you did one thing, but it applies for 3 and number 4, for example. Right. Let's go to the
Right.
So when you
I'm not repeating anything. I have to go, and that's fine. I go on twice, and I submit it twice. Then.
Yes, absolutely. So hopefully that's straightforward. And in the future too, like I threw these forms together fairly quickly, and so I didn't want it to be cumbersome to have users have to do that. So hopefully I'll work on improving these forms in the future. But at the same time, if you have suggestions as well on how we might be able to improve the form to make it user registration, to make it a little less cumbersome in the future. Yeah, I'm going to continue to work on that. But yeah, just submit it twice and make sure you select, the first time you'll submit it as commit an update or improvement, and then you reload the form and submit it again as resolve an issue.
Okay. Awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your updates.
Yeah. And I emailed you with my GitHub account. So I don't know if I can get the right stat labels, or I'm not quite sure how that works, but I'm happy to help.
Absolutely. Awesome. And yeah, you'll always have the ability to say, if you wanted to actually resolve the issue, I hope it was clear in here, because I know a lot of people don't have permission to
no, you
close
clarified
the issue.
it. And actually, while you were talking, I did exactly that. I did the edit fork, and then somebody went ahead and approved while we were talking. So my issue was already submitted and approved.
Awesome.
Just in the 5 minutes we were talking.
Very good. Yeah, and if there's something, but if you do, let's say, do that resolve an issue thing, you may not actually have the permission level to close the issue out, and that is perfectly fine. You can still gain credit.
Right.
So it's make sure that was all.
Yeah. So that second issue there, the lab guide, it was a simple edit. The NSXT 2.4. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I made the change that somebody already closed. Supposedly it's closed, right? It's RIAVM closed already.
Awesome. Riaz has been all over it. Thank you, Riaz. Excuse me.
So cool. Okay. Well, looking forward to helping out.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I'll get that, and I'll add you in here so I can actually. Let me do that right now, actually, while you're still here. So let's go into settings, and we'll go ahead and go into collaborators and teams. Enter my password again. And we'll go ahead and what's your username again?
JMARCHE.
CHE.
VMW. That's me. Yep.
There we are. So add you, and then we'll add collaborator, and then we'll give you, for now, we'll give you triage. But as soon as you're, the main, there's nothing in particular that prevents this right or admin privileges, right? I think anyone who's comfortable can have that, and it doesn't mean that you have to do anything. Some people, I think, in general, I'm going to set up something in the next sprint that'll say, essentially, road to admin. And with the idea that as once somebody donates a lab guide or contributes a lab guide, even if it's only to approve their own changes to their own lab guide, they can get admin. It's just trust-based, and it's like, if you feel comfortable that you approve your own edits, or maybe start getting practice doing simple things. It's just the only thing I just want to make sure is that people aren't going to click merge if they don't feel comfortable with whatever it is.
Right. Yeah, I don't need that power quite yet. So I'm happy to make triage and just suggest edits for now.
Awesome. And if that's something you're interested in, like, even if it's just for doing your own things, try to get this whole mentorship, not peer sharing. So I always if people have that interest, they often reach out to me, and I go through it with them. So if that's something you want to, get some more exposure to, happy to spend some one-on-one time with you, go through that process.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Yep.
Awesome.
For sure.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you. Have a great weekend, Art.
Thanks, you too.